Leila Patel learned to love silence long before she chased it across the cosmos. As a child in rural Rajasthan, she pressed seashells to her ear just to hear the hush behind the ocean echo. By 35, she was a radio astronomer stationed at Alma in the Atacama Desert, a plateau so dry and windless that the crunch of salt beneath her boots was the loudest daytime soundtrack. Yet even here the universe whispered everywhere. Stars fizzed with magnetic storms, quasars moaned with jets of plasma, Earth itself hummed like a buried power line. Leila wanted a place where that entire choir fell quiet. Her obsession began the evening a senior colleague held up a false color image at a staff briefing. A single black blotch sprawled across the monitor, darker than the background, wrong in a field of glowing galaxies. Somebody behind her murmured, "The Great Nothing." Official name: Boötes Void. A sphere of space 700 million light-years wide, holding barely a handful of galaxies when thousands should live there. Leila stared at the map as if it were a portal that could swallow every stray photon. Weeks later she drove the desert highway at dawn, antenna towers marching beside her like skeletal giants. The control building smelled of dust and burnt coffee. She took the overnight shift, knowing fewer human voices meant fewer distractions. Through the windows the Milky Way looked like a salt spill across obsidian. She tuned the array toward the heart of the void. A thin green line crawled across the monitor, radio intensity plotted against time. Static rose, fell, rose, fell. Then something rare happened. The line flattened. It hovered at the noise floor of the receivers, the bare minimum the electronics themselves produced. She felt her heartbeat boom in her ears, louder than the cosmos on her screen. Silence in astronomy is measured in Jansky, a unit honoring radio pioneer Karl Jansky, who first caught the hiss of our galaxy in the 1930s. ALMA routinely logged signals of many Janskys. The data now dipped 3 orders of magnitude lower. If the dish assemblies had been microphones, they would have been listening to snow falling on snow. Leila printed the graph, pinned it above her desk, and began to wonder, could the void be the quietest place in existence? On Earth another candidate claimed that crown. Leila had visited it during graduate study in Minneapolis, a concrete cube called the Orfield anechoic chamber. The walls were layered with fiberglass wedges that sucked up all echoes. When the door sealed, sound pressure dropped below the threshold of human breathing. After a few minutes visitors heard blood rushing behind their eardrums. Some panicked, needing the light hum of life to feel real. Leila lasted 42 minutes before dizziness forced her out. She recorded a decibel reading of -9, quieter than a calm lunar surface. Downstairs in the lobby she remembered thinking, if this is still so loud that it shakes my bones, space must be thunderous. Yet out in the Boötes Void she had evidence of a deeper hush. She proposed a focused observation campaign to the ALMA board. 3 months later she received 9 consecutive nights, the maximum the schedule allowed. She assembled a small team. Mateo, a Chilean data engineer who wrote code like poetry, and Jing, an optics specialist from Harbin who adored ghost stories and brought hot jasmine tea for luck. They christened their effort Proyecto Silencio. Night 1 opened with a sandstorm brewing on the horizon. Leila watched ochre clouds sweep beneath the stars and feared the wind would mask cosmic silence with terrestrial roar. Somehow the gusts calmed after dusk, leaving the desert flat and black. They captured 14 hours of data so smooth it resembled the line from a broken heart monitor. Jing whispered that it felt like eavesdropping on nothingness itself. Night 3 brought an unexpected spike, a brief flash of radio emission from within the void. The team cross-checked catalogs and found no known pulsar or blazar in that coordinate. Mateo joked that even emptiness clears its throat. Leila flagged the blip for later but refused to let it overshadow the larger pattern. Intervals of perfect stillness longer than any previously documented in deep sky surveys. Halfway through the run they faced a test. A supply truck failed to arrive with fresh liquid nitrogen for receiver cooling. Without the coolant, thermal noise would creep into every channel. Leila considered canceling the session, but Jing improvised by refilling dewars from reserve tanks at the neighboring optical telescope. The fix bought them 8 more hours, just enough to record the longest silent stretch yet. 132 consecutive minutes with no detectable signal above instrument background. On the final dawn, Leila climbed a ridge near the facility. The horizon blushed gold over sand flats. She imagined the void in her mind, not as darkness but as a sphere of possibility, a cosmic library with blank shelves waiting to be filled. The hush there told a story older than galaxies, perhaps a remnant of inflationary turbulence smoothing itself into calm, perhaps the mark of an ancient supercluster consumed by its own gravity. In the silence she sensed a hint of origin, as though the universe still carried rooms of quiet from its first breath. Back in the control room they compiled their findings. The sound level of the void, when converted from radio flux, registered below 1/10 of a microjansky. Compared with the Orfield chamber's -9 decibels at audible frequencies, the void's radio silence translated to -17 on the same perceptual scale. It was, by every metric they could gather, the quietest known locale. Publishing the results required caution. Silence can hide secrets. A rival team might point out that any sufficiently advanced civilization would cloak transmissions to avoid detection, making the void intentionally quiet. Others might argue that overlooking extremely faint hydrogen emission risked overstaying the stillness. Leila acknowledged those possibilities in the paper's conclusions while holding to the data. Proyecto Silencio had found a radio basin as empty as theory allowed, bordered by filaments of galaxies like reef walls around a calm lagoon. The journal release landed on a Friday. Science reporters called it the Cosmic Zen Garden. Philosophers wrote essays on how nothingness shapes something. Acoustic engineers contacted Leila asking whether the principles could inspire designs for new urban quiet zones. She answered every email until her voice cracked. One evening months later she returned to the Orfield chamber while attending a conference. Alone again in the padded darkness, she recalled the moment when the Alma graph went flat. Listening to her pulse in this earthly cube, she understood that complete silence was never truly silent. The heart always drums. The cosmos always murmurs at the border of detection. Yet she had glimpsed a threshold where that murmur fell beneath perception, a place so still that instruments and imagination alike filled the void with meaning. Leila stepped outside into the Midwestern night. Crickets chirped, cars hissed on distant asphalt, air conditioners thumped to life. None of the sounds disturbed her. She carried within her the memory of the universe's quiet room, vast enough to cradle 10,000 Milky Ways yet nearly vacant. Whenever modern life grew loud, she could close her eyes and feel the hush hover around her like interstellar velvet. Some discoveries shout. Hers whispered. But in that faint whisper she found a reminder that creation values silence as much as song. The quietest place in the universe was not merely an absence. It was a canvas, a laboratory, a holy pause between notes. And she, like any listener in awe of a great symphony, learned that the most profound moments often arrive when the music stops. If you found this helpful, hit that like button, subscribe for more amazing content.